Chapter 2. It's my party. For the first few days, Belinda was truly an invalid. She didn't eat well, and what she ate, she often didn't keep down. Her usual rosy complexion evaporated and didn't return until after the end of the week, which was just in time for what she had planned. On Saturday, 3 boys from her high school class arrived at the house after lunch to visit her. They brought flowers and candy. Carmelita appeared in the doorway of the sitting room where Mother, Daddy, and I were. "There are 3 young men here to see Belinda," she announced with little emotion. "3?" Daddy asked, his eyebrows lifting. "Yes, sir." "Boys?" "Yes, Mr. Gordon." Daddy shifted his gaze to me and I frowned. "That's very nice," Mother declared. She smiled my way, even though I continued to scowl. "Show them in," Daddy declared and stiffened up the way he usually did for business meetings that he anticipated would be difficult. He had a way of bringing up his shoulders and lowering his neck until he resembled a bird of prey. Daddy was barrel-chested, stout, and very intimidating when he swelled up and put a glint of steel in his eyes. I knew each of the boys Carmelita showed in. They had all been there to take Belinda on a date at one time or another this year. There was Arnold Miller, who had been my prime suspect only because Belinda had spent so much time with him recently. He was very tall, easily 6'4", good-looking with light brown hair and green eyes speckled with brown. From what Belinda had told me, she fancied him because he was something of a sports hero, their star basketball player and star baseball pitcher. Most of the girls wanted him for a boyfriend. Belinda enjoyed being envied more than she enjoyed being loved. Arnold's parents owned the lumber mill and garden equipment stores, one of the biggest retail outlets in Providencetown. Arnold was the oldest of 3 children, all boys. I thought he was a little shy, but I couldn't be sure if that was an act he put on in front of me. Belinda only giggled when I had first asked her about him months ago. Next to Arnold stood Quinn Lawther, who kept his amber hair long, nearly to his shoulders, which was something Daddy detested in young men. Quinn was also very popular because he had his own band at school, but in my opinion, he wasn't anywhere as good-looking as Arnold. Quinn's features were too large, and he had a narrow forehead with eyebrows that hung too far over his brown eyes. The right corner of his mouth always seemed tucked in to his cheek, giving him a habitual smart aleck smirk. Now that I gazed at him, I thought he had to be his father. He looked capable of making Belinda pregnant and not caring. He was dressed sloppily in worn trousers and a faded pullover, and obviously didn't care about his appearance or making a good impression on my parents. The 3rd young man was Peter Wilkes, a short, chubby boy with round, soft face. His father was president of Cape Coast Savings. Belinda said he always had money to spend, and the others kept him around and called him Pocketbook, even to his face. Belinda bragged that she just had to look at something and wish it was hers and he would go buy it for her. He wore a button-down white dress shirt, slacks, and laced-up dress shoes. But somehow, maybe because of the way his clothes hung on his obese body, he didn't look any better than the other 2. Quinn was their spokesperson. "Good afternoon," he said. "We came to see how Belinda's doing. We thought we could cheer her up," he added. Peter folded his cheeks into a smile and lifted the box of candy in his hands. "If it's okay, I'd like to give her this," he said. "Imported chocolates." Arnold carried the flowers. He just nodded, holding them up like a Statue of Liberty holding the torch. Daddy said nothing. He had a way of holding his words back just a moment longer than anyone anticipated. It was something he did to put people off rhythm, a way of testing them. The silence, as short as it was, made the three boys uncomfortable. They gazed quickly at each other, squirmed in their clothes, and looked from me to my mother to the floor and then back to Daddy. I brought her some notes from classes she missed, too, Peter added, reaching into his pants pocket to produce some papers. That's very thoughtful, Mommy finally said. Aren't you boys afraid of getting sick yourselves? So close to the end of the school year? Daddy questioned, his eyes narrowing suspiciously. No, sir, Arnold replied quickly. We won't get that close to her, Quinn added, digging in the corner of his mouth deeper into his cheek. Peter widened his smile. I hope not, Daddy muttered. Olivia, he said, turning to me. I know what that meant. He wanted me to show them to Belinda's room and remain as a chaperone. I rose with obvious reluctance. Maybe she's asleep, I said. She knows we're coming, Quinn quickly inserted. We called earlier and told her we'd be here about now. She should have told us too, I muttered, gazing at Daddy. He nodded in his agreement, but nothing more. Instead, he went to his newspaper, then plucked one of his cigars out of the case table beside him. Are those Havana cigars, Mr. Gordon? Peter asked as Daddy began to light it. Daddy raised his eyebrows. What do you know about cigars? Not much, but my father smokes Havanas. I can get some for you, he added, his attempt to win favor blatantly obvious. I'm quite capable of getting my own, Daddy replied sternly. Are you here to visit Belinda or jabber with my father? I asked him. Quinn poked Peter with his elbow, and the other three followed me out of the study into the stairway. Normally, my parents don't approve of my sister having male visitors in her room, I said as I led them up. One of them snickered, but I didn't give him the satisfaction of showing that I heard. I paused outside Belinda's bedroom door and turned as the three gathered anxiously around me. What power did Belinda possess to cause the young men to exhibit such enthusiasm and desire, I wondered. Was it simply her promiscuity, or did she indeed have something extra, something I could never have? Something given at birth, a quality of excitement, a promise that stirred their male hormones like witches stirred their brew. Just a moment, I said. They were breathing down my neck in anticipation. If they were horses, they'd be choking on their brittles and snorting, I thought. I knocked. Yes, Belinda called. You have visitors. Are you decent? Yes, Olivia, they can come in, she said, and I opened the door. Anyone looking at Belinda now would surely challenge my report after her birthing. Even I had to admit I was impressed with how radiant she looked. I knew Carmelita hadn't been up here after breakfast, so it was clear Belinda had straightened up her room and opened the curtains wide to prevent a soft, bright sunshine to come pouring through, making everything look clean and fresh. Belinda was wearing one of her sheerest nighties, the neckline which dipped into her cleavage, revealing breasts well mature. With the blanket lowered, the contour of her breasts was all but fully revealed. She wore her well-brushed hair down to her shoulders, the strands turned up softly at the ends. Belinda always had richer-looking hair than I, but she fussed with it far more than I bothered with my own. If she had her way, she would turn the walls of her room into mirrors. She never seemed to tire at looking at her own image. Pull up your blanket or put on your robe, I ordered. She blushed and pulled up the blanket against her chest quickly. Now, who's come to see me? She declared like some southern belle. The three boys moved timidly into her room. They claim they called you, so I don't know how you couldn't wonder who it was, Belinda, I remarked. She ignored me and concentrated on them. I brought you these, Arnold said quickly, and thrust the bouquet of red roses toward her. Oh, they're just beautiful, aren't they, Olivia? Can we find a vase for them? We? I asked. She tilted her head with a childish grin. Well, I don't think it would be proper for me to get out of bed myself, she said, her eyelids fluttering so empathetically. I thought she might fan herself up and off the bed. I grunted, stepped forward, and took the flowers. There was a vase on the dresser, and I went into the bathroom to fill it with water. I hope you can have candy, I heard Peter Wilkes tell her. Of course I can, Belinda said. Olivia loves candy too, she added loudly as I returned from the bathroom. I certainly do not, I said. I put the vase down on her nightstand and stuffed the long stem roses into it. Belinda giggled and began to open the box. She plucked the chocolate and held it between her lips, closing her eyes and moaning so lustfully. The three boys widened their own eyes and shifted about as they were in torment. Belinda, that's disgusting, I said. If you're going to eat it, eat it. Don't salivate all over it first. She laughed and sucked the round treat, offering the boys one. Each took a candy. I shook my head vigorously when she turned the box to me. Can you please put it on my table, Olivia, she said. I sighed, but not hiding my annoyance. How had I suddenly become her maid, I wondered, but did as she asked. Tell me everything I've missed, and don't leave out anything, no matter how small it seems to you, Belinda said, clapping her hands together and falling back on the large, fluffy pink pillow. Her hair fell around her face like a frame, bringing out the brightness in her eyes. Arnold pitched a shutout yesterday to finish the baseball season, Peter declared. He went the full 9 innings and gave up only 3 hits. Oh, don't start talking to me about sports. All I ever hear from you boys are scores and errors and double plays. It's boring. Boring, Peter said. Quinn laughed. Sure it is, he said. Jock stuff is always boring. He leaned over the bed toward Belinda. I wrote you a new song for the band. We're calling it Take Me to the Beach. You must have them play it for me, Belinda said. Sure. You come down to the garage as soon as you're well enough. I'll be well enough Monday, won't I, Belinda? You look well enough right now, I said dryly. Quinn got a caught smoking in the boys' room yesterday. He won't be in school on Monday, Arnold revealed with a gleeful smile. Really? Tell me about it, Belinda said, sitting forward excitedly as though Quinn had accomplished something significant in her absence. Frog Eyes came in just after I lit up. He must have been watching me from his doorway, just looking for the opportunity. He's been after me ever since I wrote those funny glasses. Ever since I wore those funny glasses that irritated him, remember? Of course I remember. That was so funny. When Belinda laughed, they all laughed. And people wonder why I don't want to go into teaching, I muttered. They turned to me. You said you didn't like Mr. Garner either way when you were in high school, Olivia, Belinda said. I said he wasn't very enthusiastic about his work, but I didn't say he was a frog. They all laughed again, as if I had meant it to be funny. Jerry gave Barbara a pretty expensive ring. It's the closest thing to an engagement ring, Peter continued. He told me they intend to get married soon after graduation. I already know about that. Marcia Gleason told me last night over the phone, Belinda said. Suicide Jerry, that's what we call him, Quinn said, laughing. Don't make fun of him, Belinda moaned, as if she were seconds from bursting into tears. He and Barbara are really in love. It's wonderful when you can find someone with whom to spend your whole life, someone who will care about you more than they care about himself, someone like my father. The three boys stopped smiling and accepted her rebuke. How she dangled them on strings, I thought, studying them each more closely. Who is the father of her dead fetus? Certainly not Peter Wilkes, unless Belinda... unless Belinda got him to give her something expensive in trade. She could do that, I thought. Anyone else came down with the flu this week? I inquired. One of them surely knew the truth about Belinda. Quinn and Arnold looked at each other and then shook their heads. I don't think so, Arnold said. Bobby Lester was out, but he twisted his ankle at the game. We only have a couple of weeks until finals. It's hard to miss class now, Peter said. Which reminds me, Belinda, here's your notes from English literature class. Oh, thank you, Peter. That's so sweet. Sweeter than candy, I asked. Belinda laughed. My sister is so funny sometimes, she explained. She took the notes and put them beside her. I'll do some studying later. That will be unusual, I remarked under my breath, but loud enough to be heard. Olivia, you know you have to pass the final in English to graduate, Belinda. You said you'd help me study, she whined. The boys looked from her to me, to her as we spoke. I will if you're serious about trying. I am. I'll come up to study with you this week, Peter offered quickly. That's very nice of you, Peter. See, somebody cares about me, she cried with delight. Her eyes slid from one boy to the other, melting each one into a doting admirer as she passed her gaze, like a benediction, turning them into worshippers in seconds. The sight disgusted me. Where were the real men of today? I couldn't imagine Daddy acting like that when he was their age. I wish you'd been at the game, Belinda, when I threw my last pitch. There you go again, talking about sports. If you don't stop, I'll close my eyes and fall asleep, she threatened. If the conversation didn't center around her, she wasn't interested. I just wanted to say I was thinking of you. This one's for Belinda, I thought. Arnold told her. Oh, she perked up, her dimple flashing. Well, that's different. You won because of me? I want everyone to know that, she declared. Arnold nodded like a soldier taking orders to go forth and bellow the news in the streets in Providencetown. They asked my hand to play a graduation party on the beach, Quinn blurted, attempting to win back her attention. That's wonderful, Belinda cried. Can I pick you up and take you to the party? Arnold asked quickly. I can get my father's Cadillac, Peter suggested. I'll just come by with my motorcycle. You can watch us set up, Quinn added. Belinda considered the offer and looked at me. What would you do, Olivia? Walk, I said dryly. She broke into a long, loud laugh and clapped her hands. Walk, I love it. Yes, who will walk with me? If that's what you want to do, Arnold said quickly, I will. Maybe he was the father after all, I thought. She had denied it too quickly. I'm not sure yet. I'll think about it, Belinda said, coyly. She dangled her promise of acceptance like bait, and the three stood there nibbling like poor dumb fish. I retreated to the corner of the room where I sat and watched and listened to them go on and on about their plans for graduation night. There was an air of excitement about them that I longed to share. I hadn't attended any graduation parties when I graduated. Daddy, Mother, Belinda, and I simply went to have dinner at the Steak and Brew House. Afterwards, I sat in my room and gazed out the window into the night, thinking about the bonfires on the beach, the music and laughter I was not sharing. No one had asked me to go, and I hated attending parties with my wallflower girlfriends. The worst thing was to stand around and hope some boy would show some attention, as if I were a beggar looking for a handout of affection. I would never give that boy a satisfaction. If loneliness was the price to pay until someone right came along, Then that was the price, I decided, and tried not to think about it. But it wasn't easy going to sleep and wondering what sort of man would come knocking on my door, bringing me boxes of candy and flowers and standing around anxiously, waiting for a compliment, a look of pleasure, a promise from my lips, as these three hovering over Belinda. "It's getting late," I finally announced. They all turned to me as if just realizing I was still there. "Yeah, I've got rehearsal," Quinn said. "I hope you feel better," Arnold said. "Me too," Peter followed. Belinda sat forward, permitting the blanket to fall too low again. The three set eyes widened and held on to the depth of her cleavage. I cleared my throat loudly and nodded at her, and she pulled up the blanket. "I'll call you tomorrow," Arnold promised. They all made the same promise, and they started out. I followed them back to the doorway and watched them descend the stairs before turning back to Belinda. "Wasn't that nice?" she asked. "Which one was it, Belinda?" "Pardon?" "You know what I mean. Who was the father?" She shook her head. "I told you, I don't know, Olivia. Besides, Daddy said we shouldn't talk about it anymore," she cried, turning her face to the pillow. "Was it one of them?" "It was, wasn't it?" "Please, Olivia." "Does he know, whoever it is? Does he know what happened in this room?" "Stop it, Olivia." She put her hands over her ears. "I won't listen to you." I closed in on her. "Did you call him and tell him what went on? What your father had to do, did you?" "No. I don't know who I would call. I told you." "Disgusting, Belinda. It's disgusting enough to do what you did, but to not know?" She started to cry. "I'm gonna get sick again, and I won't be able to return to school," she threatened. "Oh, won't that be a great loss for the school?" I muttered. I left her sniffling and went downstairs to find Daddy. He was in the office filing some papers. It was where he kept all of our personal tax documents and family papers. He turned from the cabinet when I entered. "Don't you think that was nervy, coming here like that, Daddy? Surely one of them—" "Don't, Olivia," he said, holding up his hand. "We've put it out of mind." "I know, Daddy. I'm just so angry at her for what she's done," I said. "Yes, I know, but you've got to look after her, Olivia. We've learned that lesson. Why Daddy tolerated weakness in Belinda and no one else, including my mother, was a question that stuck like a bone in my throat. "I'm depending on you to watch over her," he said. "She'll listen to you." "She hasn't up until now, Daddy. That's been proven in a terrible way." "I know, but I believe she'll change," he insisted. I stared at him a moment, and he had to shift his eyes from mine, something he rarely did. We had an unspoken but realized connection and understanding, Daddy and I. We knew we couldn't lie to each other. He was lying to me right now, and he knew it. He didn't really believe Belinda could change. Why was he lying? My anger at Belinda expanded like a balloon filling with hate because she was making Daddy lie. Someday, I vowed, she would understand and appreciate what she has done, and she will beg forgiveness. In my heart, however, I believed it would be too late for me to grant it. Remarkably, Belinda passed her finals in English just barely, with a great deal of tutoring. I had the distinct impression, however, that she also got a little help from her teachers, maybe because Daddy's position in the community. During the week before graduation ceremony, Mother asked Daddy to take us to Boston to find a nice dress for Belinda. She wanted her to look special. It was as if Mother had discovered a way to compensate for the terrible thing that had occurred. To dwell on Belinda's festivities so intensely, there was no time to think about or remember anything else. In one spending spree, she would wipe away the dark clouds that clung to the corner of our house. There would be no shadows, no reminders, nothing but bright and happy things. Daddy seemed more than eager to please her and follow her lead to the world of see no evil, hear no evil. At the last moment, Mother decided to outdo even herself and have a designer come to our home and create the original dress for Belinda to wear. The cost would easily be 3 times as expensive as an off-the-rack dress. But once again, Daddy surrendered before any battle, and to my surprise, put away his famous measurement of what's the bottom line. This time there was no bottom line. I had to admit, Belinda looked beautiful on graduation day. It was a perfect afternoon for an outdoor graduation ceremony too. A gentle warm breeze came in from the ocean and the sky was turquoise with puffs of clouds moving imperceptibly across the horizon. It had been decided that Belinda would attend the same finishing school I attended, only she would go immediately and start with the summer session. Daddy thought it was wise to get her away as quickly as he could and get her into formal training to make her more of a lady. His intentions were clear. He wanted her to be a prize for the right young man. My graduation couldn't be held outside. It occurred on a rainy day. The auditorium was stuffy and very uncomfortable, with the dozens of small children crying, flashbulbs going off everywhere, proud parents and grandparents waving and gaping like visitors at a zoo. I felt like a caged animal squeezed in with my classmates, waiting for the speech to end. Belinda's graduation was more like a grand picnic. Streamers, balloons decorated the grounds. Sunshine made everyone look bright and alive, full of happiness. Young children could go off and play out of the way of adults, and the pomp and circumference march followed melodiously through the warm air. Everyone rose, and the graduates, all looking cheerful and excited, came down the aisle to take their seats on the platform. Maybe because it wasn't my graduation, it seemed to go a lot more smoothly. The speeches weren't as long as before. Daddy surprised me with his excitement, behaving just like all the other proud fathers, rushing down the aisle to take a picture of Belinda accepting her diploma. When I graduated, he relied on the professional group photographer, and he never moved from his seat. Belinda took her diploma with her usual flair, spinning completely to beam a smile in his direction. "Thank heavens," Mother muttered beside me. I had my fears. Afterward, we celebrated at the Clam and Claw, a seafood restaurant near the point. Daddy invited some of his business associates to join, and pretty quickly into the celebration, I saw that Belinda was getting bored. She exploded with happiness as soon as Peter Wilkes appeared at the restaurant. "Oh, good," she said as he approached. "I thought I would die of boredom." "What's this?" Daddy said, interrupting his conversation to look up at Peter. "I guess I'm a little early," Peter said. "That's all right, isn't it, Daddy?" Belinda followed with exuberance. Daddy smiled with embarrassment at his guests. "Well, you haven't finished your meal yet, Belinda." "Oh, I can't eat any more, Daddy." "Where are you going?" I asked when she stood. "To the beach party, silly, remember? Daddy said it was all right," she added. I looked at Daddy. His eyes met mine and then slipped away quickly. "Well, now you get home early, Belinda. Graduation or no graduation." "Oh, Winston, don't be an ogre," Mr. Collins said. He was one of Daddy's business partners. "A young girl graduates high school only once." "Thank heavens for that," Mother said, and everyone at the table, but me, laughed. Belinda rushed around the table to give everyone a hug and a kiss. She even stopped to throw her arms around me. "Thank you, big sister," she said. I loved the suitcase. I had given her a quality piece of luggage for her trip to finishing school. It was a practical gift, one of the few she'd received. Peter gave me a weak smile and hurried along as Belinda tugged on his hand. "Bye," he called. I gazed at Daddy. He watched them go, looked at me, and then turned to talk to Mr. Collins. We left the restaurant a little over an hour later. The night proved to be as beautiful as the day. It was actually balmy. I looked out toward the ocean as we drove home and thought how wonderful it must be to be at a beach party right now. A nearly cloudless sky revealed so many more stars. The Big Dipper never looked as clear or sharp. When we arrived at home, I went directly to my room. All I wanted to do was fall asleep. Fall asleep and forget. Fall asleep and dream I was someone else, someplace else. It took me a long time because I tossed and turned, lying there at times with my eyes wide open. Sleep was behind a locked door and not ready to embrace me. You have to suffer first, I thought. You have to suffer with your loneliness. I finally fell asleep only to be woken up by a gentle and then a loud knock on my door. At first I thought it was part of a dream, then I sat up and heard it again. "Yes?" Daddy poked his head between the door and the jamb. "I hate to bother you, Olivia, but, well, your mother's worried too." "Worried? Why?" "It's nearly 3 in the morning and Belinda has not come home." "That never worried you before," I said sharply. He hesitated. "Yes, well, considering what happened." "We're not supposed to talk about it, Daddy," I snapped. I wasn't feeling very charitable. "Please, Olivia. What do you want me to do, Daddy? Could you go look for her?" "At the beach?" "Yes," he said. "We don't want her to get into any more trouble." "I can't believe she would do anything like that, Daddy," I said. He remained in the doorway. "I'm more concerned about your mother," he said. "All right," I said, "I'll go find her." "Thank you, Olivia." I rose to put on a pair of slacks and a sweater. I grabbed my light jacket on the way out and hurried down the corridor and stairs, driven mostly by anger. How could she be so insensitive and selfish? She knew what Daddy and Mother had suffered. No matter how generous or forgiving they were, Belinda always took advantage. I got into my car and headed for the beach road I knew they had taken. There was one area on the east that the school kids always favored, even before my day. Sure enough, as I started down the road, I saw cars still parked there. This was going to be an all-nighter. I found a space and parked, and then plodded over the sandy beach toward one of the bonfires. I heard laughter to my right and radio music caught in the wind. It whipped at my hair and spit some sand into my face. The ocean roared in on the line of white caps. I saw couples wrapped in blankets around the fire. But none of the girls was Belinda. They gazed up at me curiously. Some had bottles of whiskey and wine. I continued towards the next bonfire, my anger boiling over like a pan of hot milk. Once again, I didn't see Belinda, but I did recognize Marcia Gleason and Arnold Miller. Arnold nearly jumped out of his blanket when he saw me bearing down on them. "Where's my sister?" I demanded. "Belinda," he said stupidly, sitting up slowly. I could see Marcia was topless under the blanket. "No, my other 10 sisters. Of course, Belinda. Where is she?" "I'm not sure. Someone's gonna get in a lot of trouble if I don't find her within the next minute," I threatened. Do your parents know where you are and what you're doing right now, Marcia? I asked pointedly. I thought she went home, Marcia whined. The last time I saw her, she was going on a walk with Quinn over the hill, she added, nodding toward the bank behind them. I glared down at her for a moment. I hope I don't have to come back, I said, starting toward the small rise in the beach. I heard Arnold chastising Marcia for telling me anything. For a long moment after I reached the peak on the small hill, I saw nothing. Then I caught movement to my right and spotted two heads popping out of the sleeping bag. I drew closer. The movement within the bag was not hard to translate. It brought the blood to my face. "Belinda," I said, but my voice was carried off by the wind. I said it again and then approached. They both stopped and hesitated. "Olivia," I heard her say. "Damn you," I cried, and they scurried like rats, Quinn groping for his clothing on the sand. He was pulling up his pants by the time I stepped beside them. Belinda hadn't moved. "How can you be doing this?" I demanded. "We were just..." Quinn scrambled for his sneakers. "I know what you were doing, Quinn Lother," I said. "I gotta go, it's late," he said, and lunged to his feet, not taking the time to put on his sneakers. In the moment, he disappeared in the darkness. Belinda whimpered. "You ruined my graduation night," she said through her sobs. "I ruined? Do you know what Mother and Daddy are beside themselves with worry? And now that I've come here to see you, do you even see what you're doing? They had every reason to worry. How could you do this after what happened?" Was there no bottom line to Belinda's descent? "We were being careful," she said. "Oh, that's a relief to know. Do you just jump into anyone's sleeping bag on the beach, Belinda?" "No, it's graduation night," she declared, as if that was the license to lose all morality. "Just put on your clothes and come home with me immediately," I said. "But everyone's staying out all night." "Daddy sent me to get you," I declared to impress her. She didn't move. "Belinda, I'm not going home without you." "This is horrible," she cried. "You were happy to come get me. You don't want me to have a good time because you never do." "If this is what you call having a good time, you're right," I snapped back. "Just get dressed." She got out of the sleeping bag and began to put on her clothes. I couldn't watch her. It filled me with too much disgust. Instead, I turned away and looked toward the sound of the ocean. Was she right? Did I come here to get her because I was jealous? If I had met someone with whom I was attracted in high school and was attracted to me, would I have been on the beach too? Something inside me had told me no. I would have been more sensible, but at that moment, that didn't make me feel any better or superior. It put a rock of sadness into the bottom of my stomach. Belinda sulked as we trekked over the beach toward the car. The music followed us along with laughter. "I'm not going to be around all the time to save you from yourself, Belinda," I told her when we reached the car. "Good," she fired back. She was fuming all the way home. After we entered the house, she marched upstairs and slammed the door to her room. Daddy came out. "She's all right?" he asked. "Yes," I said. I decided not to give him any of the gritty details. He didn't seem to want to hear them anyway. "Thank you, Olivia," he said. "You're the strength, the steel spine of this family. You always will be," he added with a nod. It was as if he declared me heir to his throne, whether I wanted it or not. It was who I was to be. I fell asleep dreaming about that sleeping bag we had left empty on the beach.